morning, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to The Vantage Point. I'm your co-host, Crystal Dunn. To my left is Jennifer Rogers, Dr. Jessica Mosley, and youth pastor Takoya Porter. We are so excited that you have joined us today as we are going to be talking about contentment. Ladies, have you ever had a moment where you realized that you were not as content as you thought you were?
Yes.
Takoya got something to say today, y'all.
So answer this, Takoya, then.
Sure.
What made you realize you were not content?
I was crying a lot. No, seriously though.
Could you please elaborate on the talk show what that means? What does that mean?
I don't know why I'm
Okay.
doing this. I'm just being difficult. No, when I think about it, the first thing I thought about was actually after just having my kids. Especially the first one. The first one was the hardest because you just feel like my whole life just got taken over. Well, not everybody. I felt like my whole life got taken over by this little person, and I'm sitting at home for weeks, and I want to get out. And my son never took a bottle, so we were attached at the hip for a very long time. And even before that, I was so sick pregnant that I couldn't do anything. It was like a year and a half plus of just existing as a human feeding source, whether he was in my belly or outside. And it's like, okay, I have things and dreams I want to achieve. And I just felt like I was being benched in my own life for a minute. So I don't resent having kids, but I'm just saying it was a difficult time in life for me because I'm like, I don't want to just sit here. And I wasn't very happy with the way things were going.
I think that's a real place. That's I would doubt very many moms have gone through that because, again, you have to become selfless because now somebody else is depending on you and you have to put their needs before you. So I understand that. What about you, Dr. Jessica?
I'm always in that place.
So tell us how you stay content then.
I bring myself back to reality. And I think on times that I really did have a reason not to be content living in a shelter, right? So you got to go out for their rules, their regulations. But it's, especially, I'll just talk about in business. Sometimes when things don't grow like I want them to grow, or when I first started Miss CEO, I mean, I wasn't just out here. Nobody wanted to let me write for them. Nobody wanted to read my book or, or would buy my book, whatever the case, or work with me as a coach. Well, you're new, what's your experience? So sometimes you get frustrated and say, well, did God really call me to this? Maybe this was just something that I thought of that was a good idea. And so just had to learn that it takes time. I think you preached a sermon about when you take medicine and you have to give it time to work. And that's something that I draw from. Hey, you preached that years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, but it was something. It's still something I draw from to this day because it's going to take time. A lot, and I think that comes with our frustrations.
So, Takoya, you told us about contentment or not being content in the beginning of motherhood. Dr. Jessica, you've told us about what that could look like in business. What would you add to that, Jenny?
I don't know. I'm probably not the best person to ask because I'm usually not satisfied with anything that I do ever.
Her own admission.
And it's my own stuff. It's nothing anybody's ever said to me or anything like that. It's just I am my own worst critic.
Yeah.
And I am very, I sometimes have to just walk away from stuff and be like, Jennifer, it's fine. In order to sleep at night. So I am rarely content with if it's something about a project. If it's just my life, I love my life. I love my family. I remember being in a place where I was very discontented with my life. And is everything perfect? No. But there's something about the relationship you have with God that gives you a different kind of confidence in just his plan.
Yeah.
And so because I am so I just so believe that he has a plan for my life, even if things don't work out in the timing. And I don't give a whole lot of weight to that. I'm just like, okay, God, I don't know what you're doing now. I'll just have to wait and see.
I trust
But I just trust him. And so I really feel like, my relationship with him has helped me with just the overall life stuff. But just me being content with even anything that I put my hands on, it's a struggle.
So I want to read something and then come back to that. Go ahead.
No, because I was going to add to that. God knows when. And I think the more you walk with him and the more he's proven himself, because we can't go off our grandma. See, we're in our 40s now. So now we just can't go off of grandma's testimony and our, leaders' testimony. We're getting our own experience and our own testimonies with God. And it's teaching us to whatever state I'm in. I know you got my back. I know everything about you, your thoughts towards me are good. So if it's not working out the way I think it should work out, I know that in this state I should be content. Stop complaining. Normally when I stop complaining is when it happens.
I was going to read Philippians 4:11 and 12. And it says, this is Paul, not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. I know both how to be abased and I know how to abound.
My God.
Everywhere and in all things, I am instructed both to be full to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. When I read this, there's a few things that ran through my mind, but what first jumped out to me is he said, I learned. I think sometimes when we talk about being content, and there's a difference between being content and happy.
That's right.
But when it comes to being content, one definition described it as wherever I'm at, this is enough. I have what I need to suffice.
That's right.
And I think we should talk about how did we learn to be content, because it's easy to say, yeah, I'm content now, but I don't think that happens overnight, So how did we learn?
Through suffering. Through life. I learned that, especially living in a shelter, and I'm so, at first I used to cry all the time, like, why am I here? I'm not the only person that's a sin of God. Why did I have to go through here? But I believe that in my life, that through suffering, when you get to know him, I think Paul wrote this too. He said, I want to know you in the power of your resurrection and in the fellowship of your suffering. A lot of times going through stuff, I've had it where I've almost been evicted. I almost had my water cut off. I almost had where I couldn't buy certain things for my children. Leah never really went through that, but Michael did, especially with the shelter part, and he can remember. And it teaches us to just, and he still references that to this day. He was like, look, I know what it is to be without, so I'm not going to complain. But it teaches you how to trust God. God knows when. You know what I'm saying? And this contentment, I like nice things, but I don't need them. I'm content in what the Lord has given me for this day. Give us this day. That's one of my favorite prayers. Am I talking too much?
Yes.
Just kidding. You can't talk too much of a talk show.
I think it's gratefulness. I just, when you become grateful and thankful that, one, people don't have to be nice to you.
Yeah.
People don't have to give you anything. And,
Can you talk about that? Don't nobody have to give you
Don't
nothing.
nobody have to give you nothing. And God doesn't have to, he doesn't owe me anything.
That's right.
Calvary settled. He didn't need to do anything other than that, right?
So
He doesn't owe me anything, but because he's so mindful, he's a good father.
Yeah.
Being grateful for, and I mean, I've told this story before where we had to use Speedway points to get toilet paper and food, and because we didn't have money. I'm so grateful that the Lord gave wisdom to even collect 1 million Speedway points. You know what I'm saying? He just knows, and he has so carefully orchestrated my life that when I look back, I'm like, God, I can see you all in it. So why on earth would I get to this stage and now think you've abandoned me?
Come on now.
Right? So I am so grateful that I know what he sounds like. I'm grateful that I know he's mine and I'm his. I'm just grateful. So that helps with being content and helps you learn how to be content is being grateful.
The scripture that she just referenced, right? One of the translations, it says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And I saw one translation that says, I will never leave you, neither will I abandon you. It's impossible for him to do it. So if God has me in this place right now, I'm learning what the scripture just said. I'm learning to be, he's teaching me how to wait on him.
I think of something that our pastor says about expectation minus reality.
I just read that now.
Expectation minus reality is usually your reaction, whether you're disappointed or happy. And it's often relative to relationships because there's a lot of people I would think who are disappointed in maybe friendships or marriages because you get married thinking one thing. I always tell people married and dating are not the same thing. And it's not until after they've been married a minute, they're like, you're right. It's just not the same thing. You date somebody and you're like, oh, they walk on water and all they do is care about me. And we just stare into each other's eyes and life is and and then you get married, it's like, oh, okay, this is reality. Well, he doesn't like that I snore. Or, that's a true story. Or, there's just other things there.
Hashtag we support Elder.
No, that's me. Okay, we'll get that after the commercial.
They're hating on the wives at this point.
But I think it still goes back to your expectation can't be that they're going to fill all your blanks.
That's right.
Your expectation of any person can't be that they're going to meet all your emotional needs. They just can't do it.
They're not gonna.
They weren't designed to do it. They were never supposed to do it. But when you get to the place and you start thinking, God, you're enough to do this, then you take some of the weight off of them and you're like, I'm okay. I can love you and know you can't do everything I feel like I need because there's somebody who's more than enough. So I kind of think that's how you go.
I wish I could sing because I would sing that song.
What would you sing?
More than enough. I can't sing it.
We have time.
Not today.
I think one of the two things that I heard you all saying that I would summarize is one, it's going to take patience and endurance. It's not something that, like I said, you wake up in the morning and I have arrived, I'm content, but it is, you learn that through the things that you go through, the things that we have experienced. And, we don't want to jump on TV and be like, oh no, we woke up this morning and it was great. No, we've been through some things. Yeah. We've learned some things about God, which has changed our expectation, that I can be content because I'm not doing this on my own. And we're going to continue this conversation when we return. You're watching The Vantage Point.
Did you know that when you are quiet, your voice is missing to God's ears? I know some of us have prayed and we're wondering, how long should I pray about this? Why should I pray if God already knows? How will I know God is answering? And what do I do when I feel like God's not listening? But God is listening for your voice. It's too quiet in this world for the troubles we have. You have to raise your voice, and God wants to hear from you. It's Too Quiet, a book about prayer, is designed to answer your prayer questions and build your faith. Visit presstopray.com.
Because of you, I felt hopeless.
I know it was a joke, but it still hurt me.
Because of you, I felt wanted and not alone in this world.
Because you said hi to me on the first day of school, I felt included, and I knew that I was going to be okay.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Welcome back to The Vantage Point, where we are having a discussion today on being content. And one of the things to me that falls into that category or that can challenge our contentment is when we're waiting on God to do something for us. You know, I think I was having a conversation with you all and also with my husband, and I was telling him sometimes it's not that I don't believe God can do it, but it's that space between the first prayer request into the fulfillment of it, you know? And the other part is, I don't know if he's going to do it. He's able to do it, but just because I asked him doesn't mean he has to, because he's God. And I think a lot of us as Christians, we all have experienced that, God, you haven't done it for me. And don't let him do it for somebody else, you know? Because you're like, well, God, why did you do it for them and not for me, you know? Or, you know, one of my friends, she's battled stage 4 breast cancer for years, you know? And one time she said to me, she said, I hear the testimonies of God healing them completely. And she's like, but I learned to just tell God, thank you for the stages that he's taking me through, because he hasn't chosen to heal me, you know? And I thought about that. That is a real place. You know, when you say the doctors didn't find nothing, well, I'm on my 4th treatment of chemotherapy, you know? And I think when we look at that, when it comes to contentment, you know, how do I wait on you, God? How do I go through this without complaining, without giving up, without becoming discouraged? You know what I mean?
I'm still waiting on God to do something he told me he would do 12 years ago. And I don't mind waiting on him. I think some things get frustrating and you get tired, you get weary, but that's when I remember who he is. And,
I loved how you said that with a smile and with expectation. It wasn't like, God, when you going to do it? But you said, I'm waiting on him.
I'm waiting on him. I believe him. I just do. Because I've seen prayers I've prayed answered. The enemy messed up. He messed up. He messed up when he let God answer a prayer that I prayed, and I saw it for myself. You can't tell me nothing. You can't tell. If he said it, I believe it, and I won't be deterred from that. So.
I love that, because in Sunday school, and shout out to our Sunday school teachers, Terry Jackson and Letitia, well, my Sunday school teachers, Letitia and Terry. But one thing that she was breaking down was, he who comes to God must first believe that he is. And what she said has just been hitting me. She said, we're not coming to somebody just based off of what they said. She said, because if I tell you I'm going to give you $1 million, you know I don't got the power to give you $1 million. She said, but if God said it, not only can he back up what he said, he's already done it before. And that has been hitting me, that if you got me waiting on you, you're teaching me something in it. What do you want me to get out of this? Because I'm not a genie, Jessica, and I don't just move. And it was something our pastor was teaching a couple of Tuesdays ago about how God matures us. And he used the scripture that Jesus grew in stature and in wisdom and in favor with both God and man. But when I was like, wait a minute. And then he said he counted me worthy to be able to even go through the test, because I was mature enough to handle it. So if you got me facing one of the big, because I've begged God to do some stuff, and he didn't do it. He didn't do it, and I'm trying to be good today. But I called Jenny and I said, did you hear what the man of God said? He said that with this test, that God counted me mature enough to go through it. So your friend, it's something about her. Because he said he wouldn't put more on us than we're able to handle. That's right?
It's paraphrasing. Go ahead.
Yes,
You got it.
but you know, because I don't like to misquote.
We know what you're saying.
I know what you're trying. They'll know what you're trying.
But I'm excited because I'm waiting on God right now. But you count me worthy, so it kind of makes me feel a little bit better.
For me, I have learned to trust the nature of God, and that took some time.
Yeah.
You grow in relationship with God just like you do in some ways with people, in that you get to know him, you get to know how he thinks towards you. You get to have established patterns where he's done it. And then you get times where he said nothing or said no. And it can be heartbreaking. There are some things I know I've prayed for before that God did not do, or he did the absolute opposite of what I was asking him to do. And in those moments, it's painful and it hurts. But I also bow to the fact he's God. If he did everything that I asked him to do, or the way I asked him to do it, that would make me the boss. I don't believe in the name it, claim it, speak it, say it, all that hogwash that got people so messed up in their mind that they think they can control everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is he that speaketh and calleth those things that are not as though they were. He's the only one that has that power, even in the scriptures. But what we do have is the ability to trust his nature, that he's a good father, that he loves me. He loves me so much. He went through 42 generations to come and be born of a woman so that he could make sure that he could die and intercede for my sins before I could even commit them. That's the kind of love he has, that he'll reach so far. So what makes me think he'd just do this to lose me now?
Oh, my.
You know, so I've learned over time to trust his nature even when I don't know his decision. Or I don't know, or I know he's going to do something opposite of what I want. I know who he is, so it gives me this peace even when I'm crying. And so that's
May I say something? So, I said this on another show when Dr. Miles Monroe was killed in a plane crash, him and his wife and the youth pastor and their wife, and it was a whole bunch of prominent people on that plane. And his son came out the next day after they were killed on the plane, and they did a press conference, and he said something that sticks with me. He said, God may not explain himself, but he will reveal himself. God didn't always tell me then why he made the decisions that he has made. But then as time goes, you can see the revelation into why he did not do it that way. And I be thanking God, because like she just alluded to, he is a good father. And he knows what's best for me. Because we don't give we're not gonna let Reagan drive a car at 8 years old. That would be death, and we would be setting her up. But at a certain age, when she was mature enough to handle it, she's gonna allow her to do that. God knows, I just keep hearing that in my spirit. God knows when. God knows when. God knows when. Okay, I'll be quiet.
I think one of the benefits of walking with God and having a relationship, I think Takoya said his, I'll say it like this, I can't remember how exactly he said it, but his track record.
Yeah.
You know, even when, I think that first initial, I'm not going to call it letdown, but God didn't do it my way. The first time you experience that, you are devastated. You are, oh gosh, I can't believe you didn't do it this way. I thought this, until farther down the road, as you guys alluded to, you see, oh man, God, your thoughts are so much higher than mine.
Yes.
You're God, you're all-knowing, you're all-powerful. I think when I take that and I mix it in with how Jeremiah said he gives us thoughts of peace, I'm going to paraphrase, to get us to expected end.
That's right.
Then if we go to Paul and he says, all things, I think that's Paul, is that in Romans, right? All things are working together for our good. It may not look good, it may not smell good, it may not sound good, but because
Finish that scripture, for we know
that all things work together
for the good of them
who love God and are called
according to his purpose.
Yes.
It's about his purpose.
Yes.
She just wanted to preach that last line. Go ahead.
No, but it is.
But I think if the Lord will allow us to be reminders to our other sisters who are walking with God, and remind you that this walk is not a sprint. This is a day-to-day journey, but we are not by ourselves. God promised he would never leave us nor forsake us. And I think when we're in those moments where we're not happy or we're feeling some kind of way about the process or what page we're on in the story, we have to remember his track record. He's never lost. He cannot lie. And he really does love us.
Yes.
And the fact that we have willingly relinquished control of our lives to him, that comes with a certain amount of peace. Even when we don't know what he's going to do, we still trust him, and I think contentment coupled with faith, you have to include, God, I trust you. I don't know what you're doing. There are some paths, some decisions that God allowed to happen that I thought was going to kill me. I thought, God, I'm never going to recover from this, but in his infinite will, he knew I wasn't going to fall. He knew I wasn't going to give up. He knew I wasn't going to walk away from him. But in fact, what was supposed to destroy me made me trust him even more, and I think we have to remind ourselves and encourage ourselves, God's got this. Whatever it is you're facing, whatever it is you're going through, you got to remember that God is still in control.
And I think part of that, remembering God is in control, that's a form of worship.
Yeah.
Because it's recognizing that he's higher than we are. His thoughts are not our thoughts, and his ways are not our ways. And when you start to worship God, there's a different perspective that you have. It's a different point of view. And what you'll find is that you only get to see what he's doing when you get to his point of view. As long as you keep your floor seats, so to speak, looking laterally around you, you can only see what's around you. But when you elevate how you view it, and you see where he's coming from, that takes knowing him and getting to his point of view. So worship does that. Prayer does that. Praise does that. Because that's why they say praise your way through it, or praise him anyway, because it reminds you he's big. And now I'm going to VeggieTales. He's big, I'm little. But he knows what he's doing. Oh my. And when you see that from his point of view, it changes everything.
And that's what I love about Sequoia's book, when she talks about prayer. It is bringing your mouth to his will. I think that is so, I'm going to be quiet, but that's what I just thought about.
One thing that came to mind is I remember a season. I'm just going to call it a day. It was a season, but in one day, God changed it for me, and he didn't change it by fixing it. He didn't change it by making the details any different than what they already were.
Right.
But I was crying out to him, and he said, in everything, give thanks. And it messed me up. I think I might have said this with one of you guys before, but it messed me up because he said, in everything, give thanks. And I'm like, God, in this, and I remember I just started giving him praise. I just started giving him thanks. And he said, when you do that, you command everything else to bow. And it changed the way that I viewed the test. Giving him thanks didn't mean he was even going to fix it. It just meant whatever this is, you got to bow. And I think that's the takeaway. It is possible, no matter what you're dealing with or where you're at or what season in life, to give God thanks. Thank you for joining us today on The Vantage Point.